Welcome back here to X's and Bros on the Michigan Sports Network. Danny Cahalan, Ryan Elke, Anthony Bellino, all joining you. Joining us now, a member of the National Football Foundation, the Football Writers Association of America. Also spent a couple of decades covering the Detroit Tigers minor league system. Our good buddy John Wagner. Find him on Twitter at John Wagner Sport. Johan, my friend, good morning to you. How are you? How's life? How are things? Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, all that good stuff.
Yeah, a lot of ground to cover just in the introductions, Anthony. My goodness. Hope you're feeling better, first of all. Feeling better?
Thank you. It's a toss-up.
Fair enough.
It's a toss-up.
Yeah, it is what it is. Well, Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Hope you are you still wearing black, or have you moved to Honolulu blue and silver?
No, I mean, I'll still wear my I'll still wear my Michigan gear. So let's start there with game number 1 on Saturday. Michigan falls to TCU in a shootout, 51-45. And throughout portions of that game, John, even when the score was incredibly lopsided to the tune of, even 21-6 at halftime, it felt like a tie game. And it was like, man, I know that Michigan is in trouble here at this point because they are not playing well. I mean, this is the Murphy's Law of a football game right here. They're not tackling. Their offense looks stagnant. TCU's defense is spending their entire day making sandwiches behind the line of scrimmage against that Joe Moore Offensive Line of the Year award winner. Second year in a row we've gotten that award. In second year in a row, we've watched after that award has been handed out, a team's defense just absolutely run the line of scrimmage against the Michigan Wolverines. But it never felt like TCU, at least in my opinion, watching it. I never felt like Michigan was out of it. It never really felt like a 3-score game. It always felt like this thing was tied, and Michigan just couldn't get over the hump. At least that's how I felt.
Yeah, I'll meet you halfway. I never felt they were out of it, but at the same time, I never felt they were good enough or playing well enough, I should say. They were certainly good enough to come back. I didn't think they were ever playing well enough to overcome the mistakes that they were making. And I mean, that's part of it, and also the problems of getting beat on both sides of the line. And if you are summing up Michigan's season coming into that game, what's your focus? The way that they seem to dominate both sides of the line, and the way they don't create turnovers or make turnovers to hurt themselves. And they were doing both of those. I mean, it was so against the grid that until they cleaned that up, I never felt they were going to do the job they needed to do. I wasn't feeling it. I got to be honest. I was not feeling it.
I was, as much as I was surprised at how poorly the offensive line played through 4 quarters, I was equally as disappointed from the defensive inability to tackle anyone. You march the football all the way down on the opening drive, and then you try to run that Philly special, whatever the hell that was, where Colson Loveland was trying to, he was taking the double reverse. He was going to pass. I don't know. It felt like, I know one of TCU's players said this afterwards. It felt like when Michigan had to run a trick play there, at 4th down and goal to go from the 2-yard line, TCU felt like at that moment they had them. They had them where they wanted them. Now that TCU would punt on their ensuing drive, and the Michigan would throw in their first of 2 pick sixes. But I just absolutely hated that play call in that moment. Donovan Edwards gets that big run, gets you 54 yards on the opening play from scrimmage. You have to score on that drive. To walk away with 0 was such a gut punch there early.
Agreed. And, the part that I was wondering was, if you're going for it there and you're Michigan, especially this year's Michigan team, you've got to run it. I mean, you've lived your life running the ball. You're basically saying, listen, our men are going to blow your men off the line. That's how it's going to happen. So for me, it was a question of, could you blow TCU off the line enough to get 2 yards? And if not, then you need to kick a field goal and get points. So when they went to trickeration there after setting the line, yeah, I agree with you. I thought that was a dreadful decision. Even if it worked, you're kind of telling TCU, listen, I'm not entirely sure we can beat you off the line. And when you didn't succeed with it, you basically said, listen, we're we're not entirely sure we can beat you. And I am probably overstating it. I am probably overstating it. But look at it from TCU's perspective. If that's what they think they have to do to beat you, you talk about a confidence booster, that should turbocharge your confidence.
And it did. It turbocharged TCU, and this game just squandered opportunities one after another. Even when it was 14-0, Michigan comes down, settles for a field goal. They get an interception, and then there's that big pass play from J.J. McCarthy to Roman Wilson, which in discussing this on Sunday with one of the NFL's replay officials, he could not figure out exactly why that was not ruled a touchdown, because as Roman Wilson is catching the ball, in the process of catching this ball, the ball is moving around a little bit as his hind end comes down prior to the goal line. When he finally has control of the football, he's clearly within the purple. I didn't, especially as it was called as a touchdown on the field, I did not get that. That one really irritated me a lot, because then the ensuing play, well, don't fumble the football. That's part of it too. But then you fumble, and then it's just. That was just a gut punch number 2.
And I'm wondering if you're going to hit another late gut punch when on the fourth down play they don't look at targeting on the hit.
Yeah. What is targeting, though? What do we even know? 15 bowl games, and nobody has any idea what it is.
Yeah, and let me just say this. Did Michigan really play well enough that break changes your mind and it changes everything? And man, we're turbocharged and blah, blah, blah.
Absolutely
Yeah,
not.
you know what? It makes it a different game. Yes, but it doesn't make Michigan a different team. And on that night, Michigan was just not good enough to win a national title or a semifinal game. It's funny, and I'm sorry, I'm going to just veer off for just a second, but I promise to get us back on track. I covered the Mid-American Conference for years and years. When the Mid-American Conference would go up against a Power 5 school, I would tell people all the time, hey, 2 things have to happen here. One is the MAC school has to play well. Has to. If they don't play well, they're not going to win no matter what the Power 5 school does. But the second part, and equally important, is the Power 5 school has to not play well. They have to open the door for the MAC school to take advantage of it and win the game. That you need both of those elements. It cannot be any other way. Not going to be an upset for a MAC school unless both of those elements are in place. In a championship game against a championship caliber team, you can't have a subpar effort. You just can't. Michigan didn't have a great effort against Illinois, but that's not a championship team, and they were able to find a way to win. Against a TCU, against a Georgia, against Ohio State, name any team you want that's in that upper echelon. You can't have a subpar effort against that kind of team and expect, oh, you know what, we'll just out-talent them. No, it just doesn't happen. So you can talk all you want about how, that play would have changed the momentum, that would have changed everything, it makes it a different game. Yes and no. It makes the score different. It didn't make the way Michigan was playing any bit different. It just didn't. And if you're a Michigan fan and you haven't come to grips with the idea of your team did not play well enough to win in that semifinal, well, you got to catch up to the rest of us who have.
I think that's a really good point, because I look at I look at all of this, and I think to myself, when we have what you are saying in a nutshell here, I thought from the opening kick, Michigan, as much as they talked about it being a quote-unquote business trip, they felt more focused this time around than they did against Georgia last year. I didn't feel like they brought nearly the same intensity or moxie that they had in Columbus. From the opening rip of it, it did not feel. And I don't know if that was credit to TCU. I'm not really sure how to put my finger on that. But to me, it just didn't feel like this team. They're not. This isn't going to go well.
I won't talk to that because I don't know. I mean, if you say it, I'll believe it. Okay. What I would say was the guys who played great against Ohio State and played a key role in them winning that game did not have great games against TCU. And I know everybody thinks I'm talking about one guy. Yeah, I'm not. Before you even say that player's name. Yeah, he didn't have a great game. But I think you could run up and down the line and look at a number of Michigan players who didn't really have great games. I mean, if you were picking an MVP for Michigan for that game, who would you pick? I'm kind of stumped. I got to be honest.
Yeah, MVP.
And that's my point. That's my point. I mean, you didn't really have anybody step up. I just didn't feel that. And that's in a game of that level, you have to have guys who step up. I mean, go look at the Georgia and Ohio State game. Can we talk about the guys who stepped up there? Yeah. I mean, and it's obvious. And it's why both teams, I mean, that was a game where both teams deserved to win. It was sad to see a team lose there. And Ohio State or Georgia, I thought they both played grade A games. They had good performances. There were mistakes here and there, but they were both deserving of a win. It was pretty obvious who were their MVPs were, and their key players stepped up.
Were you surprised
for Michigan?
Were you surprised from that Ohio State game that they played as well as they did against Georgia? I mean, the first half there was like the sum of all of my fears. Like, don't let us get knocked out. We beat Ohio State. We win the Big Ten. Don't let Michigan get knocked out in game number 1 and then watch Ohio State upset Georgia for a trip to the national championship. I mean, that's like sickening. I mean, I thought I was sick last week. This would that would have been worse.
Like a true Big Ten fan.
No. To hell with Ohio State.
Well, all right, that's sufficiently unsubtle. I hear it. I know you hate the SEC, and I'm not telling you you're wrong in that hatred. I would say this, though. You got to give the SEC marks. Their schools all support one another in the bowl. You should want the Big Ten to play well in bowl games.
Not Ohio State. Anybody else? Yeah. Purdue? Purdue yesterday. What a debacle that was. Like, you could see that the writing was on the wall.
The Boilermakers shut up and played. Yeah. Here's the problem: is
63-7. That was disgusting.
They're playing the third or fourth best team in the SEC in LSU. We could argue. Well, put it this way: they're easily a top 5 team in the SEC, probably top 4. With Hooker hurt, maybe they're number 3 in the SEC. Purdue is not a top 3 team in the Big Ten. If they're number 4, it's because it's by default, basically, because there is no number 4. I mean, that was a mismatch the moment it was announced between LSU and Purdue. That was a mismatch the moment the game was announced.
I like how they brought Purdue's new head coach up to the booth, and they just we're not even going to show you the game. We're just going to show you the broadcast team. Shout out to Dan Orlovsky, former Lion, and this new coach. We're not even going to show you what's happening on the field. Here's these 3 guys just talking football because this is just a bludgeoning. Like it was spare us all having to watch LSU just thunder punch Purdue up and down the field. Like, that was a debacle. I'm glad you said that since it was announced that game was going to be absolutely just ugly. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That game was going to be sick. And I root for the Big Ten. I do. I just never for Ohio State. Never going to do it. Can't change. Not going to.
I just want to confirm, Anthony, what league does Ohio State play in?
Don't know. Never heard of them. Minnesota, I was rowing boats against Syracuse. As much as I hate the SEC, John, I at least respect them. The ACC, bunch of scrubs. Love to see Minnesota beat Syracuse. Maryland punched NC State in the throat like that, 16-12. That was a beautiful thing. Iowa slapping Kentucky for 4 quarters, 21-0. That was great. Illinois fell to Mississippi State, obviously with the passing of Mike Leach. You know, you feel for those kids there at Mississippi State, and good for them, you know, to be able to get that victory. But, I mean, I'm rooting for Penn State last night in the Rose Bowl. They put on quite a performance against your Utah Utes. Purdue, I was rooting for them. I knew it wasn't going to happen, but good luck, Purdue. You know, try to at least maybe cover, even though I took LSU, because why would you ever take Purdue in that game? Everybody else, that's fine. Ohio State, absolutely not.
Well, it's funny. You mentioned my youth. My youth had their quarterback hurt. Now, it doesn't explain why their defense played so poorly in the second half, because, you know, quarterbacks don't have a lot of play on defense, but it certainly didn't help when their starting quarterback and their most important player gets hurt and can't come and play anymore. I mean, he's not the reason they lost. They lost because they played so poorly on defense in the second half, but that surely didn't help. Utah's a good team, and I can't believe you haven't taken me to full task for my love of the Pac-12 and that fine, just wonderful performance by USC in the Cotton Bowl. See, I didn't see a moment of Purdue. Good Lord, I wasn't going to watch that game.
No,
and then I had the Tulane USC game on instead, which that was a wonderful game. An amazing finish by Tulane there to win that game.
I mean, I didn't want to do this because Tulane plays the American. We know that the American, you know, they refer to themselves as Power Six, and we know they puff their chest up, and Cincinnati's been in the dance. Like, that's fine. But that was just such a great example for my expanded college football playoff. I mean, it was so beautiful to watch that. All I could think about was you, John, as Tulane got that review there at the end of the game. And I'm like, this is what it's all about, baby. This is like, roll it out there and kick it off, and let's get weird and see what happens. Like, this is why we expand the playoff and get the conference champions, all of them in there. Let's go.
Yeah, see, the problem is, the way I viewed it is, that's why we love bowl games, not why we love a college playoff. We get a different game if that's a college football playoff. USC, you have to think they come in there washed out. There's a chance they play in the championships. They find a way to lose to Utah and aren't in it. You can tell their heart's not in it. Now, they're a good team. They played just a dreadful fourth quarter, especially dreadful 5 minutes. They weren't very good all game long, though. I mean, they let Tulane stay in the game. If that's a college football playoff game, that's a rout for USC.
Oh, you can't. No. There's no. Tulane beat them straight up.
About that game, if it's a playoff game,
straight
they
up.
Don't care about it in this scenario.
Oh, they should care about it because they got embarrassed on national TV. He is John Wagner. Find him on Twitter, John Wagner Sport. He's anti-expansion, anti-fun, anti-little guy. It's me. I'm standing up for you, the people. Vote for Bellino, the commissioner of college football. As always, Johan, thank you, my friend.
Happy New Year to you and your listeners, Anthony. I hope you have a great week.